The woman was already several hundred years old, yet her appearance remained youthful and beautiful, and it wasn't just her. Everyone here might have lived for hundreds of years, because none of them were human. They were the legendary beings known as yokai. Yushi had a nightmare. In the dream, not only were yokai playing mahjong, but even when he was eating, he was surrounded by yokai. Yushi thought it was all just a dream, but when he opened the window, the little birds outside were actually talking to him. Yushi thought he was hallucinating. He immediately shut the window. Amid the blooming cherry blossoms, Yushi welcomed his middle school graduation. Graduating alongside him was his best friend, Mizuki. As a memento of their graduation, the two made a promise to have a fight that day. With the whistle of the train echoing in the distance, a brand new life was about to begin. They sincerely congratulated each other. Mizuki had gotten into the best high school with top marks. In the future, he was certain to become an elite of society. Yushi, on the other hand, was admitted to an ordinary school, but it was the only one in the area with a dormitory. Mizuki knew very well, Yushi had taken one more step closer to his dream, because when Yushi was very young, his parents had died in a car accident. After that, he was taken in by his uncle's family, but his uncle and aunt treated him with disdain. His cousin often looked at him coldly. From then on, being able to live on his own became Yushi's dream, but he never expected. Just a few days after the school year began, the dormitory at his school caught fire. The entire building was burned to the ground. Yushi had no choice but to temporarily return to his uncle's home, but this only made his cousin even more unhappy. She even said some cruel things. Looking at the indifferent family before him, Yushi decided to move out, but he simply couldn't afford the expensive rent. Just when he was feeling helpless, a boy told him there was a housing agency nearby. There, he would find the place he needed, and then the boy disappeared. When Yushi arrived at the agency, he explained his situation briefly to the owner. The owner quickly found an apartment that suited him. It included water, electricity, heating, and daily meals. There was even a public bath, and most importantly, the rent was extremely cheap. But there was only one drawback. The apartment was home to yokai. Yushi thought it was just a joke. The next day, he followed the owner to an apartment called Kotobukiso. Although it looked old from the outside, the inside was neat and tidy. Yushi found himself liking it. At that moment, a book caught his attention. Its author was Ishiki. The next instant, Ishiki appeared right in front of Yushi. Akane also showed up, drawn there as well. She was also a high school student living alone. Cheerful and enthusiastic, she warmly offered to help Yushi arrange his room. But then she saw the memorial tablets of his parents. Yushi had no choice but to tell her about his past. After hearing his story, Akane comforted him gently. Her kindness made Yushi blush a little. At dinner, a yokai named Ruriko prepared a welcome meal for him. Ruriko's cooking was exquisite, beloved by everyone in the apartment. As the fragrance of food spread, many residents were drawn to the dining room. Yushi was startled, because among them were beings clearly not human. Yushi was about to ask Akane about it, but since she had a hospital night shift, she hurriedly left. Just then, sounds came from the other rooms. Yushi stepped inside, only to see 4 yokai playing mahjong, and in the next room, a dog was sitting with a child watching static-filled TV. They, too, were yokai. Then Ishiki suddenly appeared, and asked if Yushi wanted to join him for a bath. While bathing, Yushi spoke about the strange events he had encountered. Ishiki told him this was the yokai apartment, and then he looked toward the landlord. To Yushi's shock, the landlord was a giant egg. With the landlord's arrival, Yushi was suddenly submerged in the hot spring water. When he woke up, it was already the next morning. He rushed out of the room, only to find Ishiki sweeping the yard. Ishiki said that if Yushi was too afraid, he would help him pack his things and leave. As Yushi hesitated, Akane happened to return from her night shift. Yushi panicked, because behind her was a ghost. He quickly rushed forward to save her, but Akane suddenly chanted an incantation. A magic circle appeared, instantly purifying the ghost. She told him she was training to be an exorcist. It was a profession Yushi had never heard of before. Ishiki explained that because Yushi now lived in the yokai apartment, he would encounter all sorts of fascinating people and events. It was nothing like real life. Although most of the residents here were yokai, they were all kind and gentle. Maybe only by staying here, Yushi's independent life could truly begin. Only here could he escape that house that never felt like home. One day, Yushi thought of writing a letter to Mizuki, inviting him to visit, but no matter how he tried, his words always involved yokai. He worried Mizuki would think he had lost his mind, so he gave up on writing. Later, Yushi went to the dining hall. Unexpectedly, A child and a dog stared at him. They looked so adorable. Yushi couldn't resist reaching out to pet them. Even though they were ghosts, the special barrier in the yokai apartment allowed him to touch anything he could see. There were also passages in the apartment that led to different dimensions. Just then, Ishiki asked him what his choice would be. Would he continue living in the yokai apartment, or go back to that house that wasn't his? Yushi chose to stay without hesitation. To celebrate his moving in, Ruriko made a delicious cake. At that moment, whether Ruriko was a yokai or not, Yushi didn't care anymore. But what shocked him was that Ruriko's true form was only a pair of hands with no other organs. Hearing Yushi praise her cooking so sincerely, Ruriko grew a little shy. Then she happily flew away. Thus Yushi's high school life began. At first, he thought the new semester would be exciting, but living in the yokai apartment, he found it hard to care about ordinary things. One day, when he returned home and opened the door, a voice suddenly greeted him. Yushi was startled, but he could never find out who the voice belonged to. Ishiki explained that it was Miss Miko's voice. She often greeted residents at the entrance. Akain added that soon, Yushi would be able to see Miko himself. Cold sweat broke out on Yushi's back. The thought of yokai suddenly appearing still scared him, but Ishiki told him, yokai were all companions. They simply lived in their own way. Among them were good and bad, just like humans. As Yushi pondered this, a dog suddenly appeared. Yushi panicked, thinking it was a wolf demon, but then he was mocked by the dog's owner. He was an artist named Fukase. The dog's name was Cigar. They also lived in the apartment. Yushi was about to ask if he was human, but Fukase pressed down on his head because the way Yushi spoke sounded disrespectful to yokai. At that moment, another strange resident appeared. Before Yushi could react, the man immediately began promoting his product. In his hand was a unicorn horn, which he claimed could dispel evil thoughts. He shoved it right in front of Yushi's face. Thankfully, Ishiki stopped him just in time. This man was an antiques dealer, constantly traveling all over the world. Some said his assistant was a robot. Others claimed it was an artificial human. In any case, his identity remained mysterious. At dinner, Miko carefully prepared a seafood feast. Everyone expressed their gratitude. Then a woman looked directly at Yushi. She complimented him on being very cute, and without hesitation, leapt onto him. Fukase, standing nearby, warned Yushi to be careful, because this woman was actually an old lady. Her name was Mariko, and she was a ghost. To free himself from Mariko, Yushi shouted angrily and pushed her away. At that moment, all the yokai began to tremble. Yushi thought they were frightened by his outburst, but in fact, it was the arrival of a man that filled them with fear. He walked straight up to Yushi and introduced himself as Ryu, a psychic. Seeing Yushi's puzzled look, Ryu told him that if he had questions, he could ask him. Yushi immediately asked why so many yokai lived here. Ryu explained that this place was a sanctuary for yokai. In the past, people only knew of mountains, rivers, and the land. They tended to see the unknown with negativity, but as human society developed, people gradually stopped believing in yokai, and so, yokai lost their places to exist. Ryu then encouraged Yushi. He told him to live well here. For Yushi, pain and sorrow were only one side of life. If he paid attention, many things could feel ordinary. The yokai he saw in the apartment would slowly become part of his everyday life. After all, he still had a long future ahead. With that, Ryu departed. Through this conversation, Yushi's outlook on life began to change. He had always refused social interactions, but now, thanks to Takako's persuasion, he joined the school's foreign language club. He couldn't say he liked it, but at least he didn't dislike it. After Yushi entered high school, whether it was Takako or Akain, they would take the initiative to talk to him. But whenever he thought of his parents, his mood darkened. Because of their deaths, Yushi's heart had long been unsettled. He couldn't confide in anyone, nor could he laugh sincerely. But now, things were slowly changing. After school, Yushi had just said goodbye to Takako, but when he turned around, he suddenly felt she was in danger, though he didn't know why. A sense of dread grew in his chest. When Yushi ran after her, his fear came true. A motorcycle collided with her. By the time Yushi arrived, Takako's leg was bleeding. She kept crying out to him for help. Yushi grabbed her hand and comforted her, but the next moment, a green light spread around him. When the glow faded, a black mist covered his hand. Then his body began to move out of his control. Just then, Akain rushed over. She pressed her finger to his forehead. The black mist was instantly drawn away. As it vanished, Yushi felt a wave of relief. Back at the apartment, Akine explained what had happened. Yushi had triggered an ability to synchronize feelings with others. He had absorbed Takako's injuries into his own body, and Akine had the power to release what he absorbed. The ability caused no harm to him, though it happened by accident this time. Yushi still broke into a cold sweat. Fukase warned Yushi to be more careful in the future, because every yokai in the apartment was his companion. They all worried about his safety. The next day, Yushi went to visit Takako. She thanked him for saving her. She said she thought she was going to die, but the moment she saw Yushi, her body suddenly felt lighter. It was as if he had absorbed her pain. Though Takako couldn't explain it, the experience had been extraordinary, so she sincerely thanked Yushi. Ever since his parents' deaths, Yushi had always been the one thanking others. He never expected that, after starting an independent life, he would receive thanks himself. It not only filled his life with hope, but also made him realize his special ability could help people. To cheer him up, Ruriko secretly made him a lunchbox. Though Ruriko was a yokai, with her diligent hands, she conveyed the boundless warmth of yokai. That day, Kuri was taking a nap with the little dog Shiro. The next moment, Shiro suddenly sat up, because it had caught the scent of Kuri's mother. Yushi thought Kuri's mother was human, but what appeared was actually a yokai. Sakura was a spirit beast serving at a shrine. She wasn't Kuri's real mother. When Kuri was born, his mother was abandoned by her husband. She placed all her resentment on Kuri, and took out all her anger on him. At an age when he should have been happy, Kuri became expressionless. He never felt any love, until he met the stray dog Shiro. Only then did he feel warmth. The life of a stray was hard, but with Shiro always by his side, he felt a little bit of joy. One day, however, Kuri's unstable mother suddenly found him, and she killed him. When Shiro returned, it was furious. It bit through the mother's throat. Shiro could have run away, but instead, it chose to be beaten to death by the people who rushed over. Because it couldn't let go of Kuri, it worried his small soul would get lost. It was afraid no one would protect him, but the matter didn't end there. After Kuri's mother died, her spirit continued to cling to him. Shiro had no choice but to seek help at a shrine. At that time, Sakura had just lost her own child. When she saw Kuri and Shiro, so pitiful, her protective instincts grew stronger. So Sakura brought them to Kotobukiso, because what Kuri needed most now was to feel human love. In fact, destroying Kuri's mother's ghost was simple, but that wouldn't truly save Kuri, because attached to him was the filth born of his mother's resentment. If that filth wasn't cleared away, his soul couldn't ascend to heaven. They could only wait for his mother's grudge to weaken over time, but no one knew how many years that would take. Since Kuri's mother came searching for him every year, tonight was the night she would appear. Everyone thought they should prepare to face the ghost, but in reality, they held a banquet for Kuri and Shiro. Because Kotobukiso had protective barriers, such evil spirits couldn't enter. They could only wander outside the gate. Everyone advised Yushi to go back, but Yushi chose to stay. He wanted to protect Kuri together with them, and he wanted to know what kind of mother could hate her own child so much. When Yushi was in 7th grade, his parents died in a car accident. It was an extremely sad event, but he never shed a single tear, because it happened so suddenly. Before he had time to grieve, the funeral was already over. As night fell, Kuri's mother appeared, but no matter what, she could never break through the barrier. At this point, her thoughts and feelings were gone. She didn't even know why she lingered there. Yet even so, her resentment toward Kuri remained. When Kuri's mother finally left, the matter came to a temporary close. Sakura thanked Yushi for staying with Kuri. The antiques dealer even gave him a dreamstone, hoping he could have a good dream. Akine continued to protect Kuri. Yushi made a special visit to see him. Looking at Kuri, so well behaved and adorable, yet having a mother like that, Yushi couldn't help but feel sad. Although the mother's resentment hadn't faded, Yushi hoped that within it, there was still some trace of love. Even the tiniest bit would be enough. That night, Yushi had a dream. His parents and Mizuki appeared by his side. Though he couldn't recall the exact details, he remembered everyone was smiling. The whole dream was warm and joyful.